to Season 2 of this podcast is Uncalled For. Okay, what the heck's going on here? Let's try this again. Hi everybody, welcome to Season 2 of this podcast is Uncalled For. Excuse the background noise, I am at Homer's Coffee Shop in downtown Overland Park. And let's go and get started. So before we kick things off, just want to tell you a couple of the interviews we have coming up for Season 2. We have Mark Parton is going to be on the podcast, and Conrado Salazar is going to be on the podcast. I'm going to get scheduled a couple of other interviews, including but not limited to Lucas Stone King, Daniel Rains together. We're going to get Melazim on the podcast, and Andrew Rainey will also be on the podcast at some point. So, one of the things I wanted to do with this live stream is answer some questions. Unfortunately, I have not received any questions in the AMA, but I have received a few questions from live people, and I'll go ahead and answer those questions. So, the first question, this was from one of my gamer friends, as why not make this podcast is Uncalled For a game theory podcast? Because it really wasn't my intention, and if I want to do a game theory podcast sometime in the future, I might, but this one is basically my autobiography in podcast form, and I plan on keeping it that way. So that answers that question. The next question on the list, how did I go from being Catholic to being a Mormon? This in response to my Mormonism podcast, being an ex-Mormon. So part one, I was never confirmed Catholic, if that makes any sense to you. I was just raised in the church, and in fact, none of my family currently practices Catholicism. How I came to be Mormon, it's pretty simple. Actually, missionaries came to the house, knocked on the door, did their thing, and the funny thing was I was at I was getting ready to go to an ROTC formation the night in question, and in fact, one of my best friends growing up was LDS. So that's how I came to be LDS for a while. Was baptized December 31st, not 20. It's 1996. It was my senior year of high school. New Year's Eve. So I hope that briefly and satisfactorily answers that question. Next question, and I am actually recording this on the TV in front of me. They're showing a game. It's Chiefs at Lions. And ties directly with the next question, which was actually asked by one of my chess students. Why am I not a Chiefs fan? Well, if geography were to dictate which team I support, I probably would, but I'm not. For a few reasons. One, I don't like the fan culture. It's home of the brave, not home of the Chiefs. I find that's very disrespectful. Everything, I can't get behind that. Another reason I was never a fan of Marty Schottenheimer. I think his style of football, well, that might have worked at some point early in the history of football. It doesn't work today, and I saw a little bit of that in their last few years in St. Louis with Marty's son, who, by the way, quarterbacked just down the street from me. It's Blue Valley High School. That was run, don't even worry about passes, and if they're passes, just a short pass and everything, hope that all goes well. Well, I don't think that philosophy works in modern football. Everything. But the biggest reason for me, at least being a former St. Louis fan, has to do with how the owners voted, and that actually played a role in me finding a post-Rams team to be a fan of. So there was this LA committee, right? It was 6 owners. They voted 5-1 to okay the Carson plan, which would move the Chargers and Raiders to LA, and kept the team in St. Louis as a result. The one no votes, which was essentially an anti-St. Louis vote, was Clark Hunt, who owns the Kansas City Chiefs. And then after that whole debacle played out, he has the nerve to start courting fans who basically he told, go fuck yourself. You don't deserve your own NFL team, but please come support mine. So that pretty much killed any shot of me ever being a fan of the local NFL team. And it's not listed on my questions, but as a follow-up question, who is my post-Rams team? It is the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, I am aware of the irony. They used to play in St. Louis. But the vote was 30-2, the final vote on that committee. And I heard from someone who was at those meetings that one of those 2 owners was Michael Bidwill, who owns the Cardinals, and whose father is actually the one responsible for moving the team to Phoenix. And I've heard a lot, especially the last few years, about the differences between what Bidwill did when he moved the team and contrasted with Señor Stan, con el corazón de perro, el diablo con dinero. The last question I have written down here is, why do I support Santa Fe Wanderers over supporting KC? Listen to my podcast on independent soccer and promotion relegation. As Wanderers have come out in support of hashtag #ProRail4USA, whereas Sporting, being an MLS side, they are, frankly, part of the problem in that regard. So that's going to do it for the questions I received already. Oh, we got 2 people watching this stream. Cool. No one submitted any questions yet. So, okay. Let's go over to the Reddit, see if there's any questions there. No questions. By the way, I'm doing this for International Podcast Day, which is actually tomorrow. I was originally going to do this tomorrow, but fear of how things would turn out today, or tomorrow rather. I decided to push it back to today. And coincidentally, yesterday was my birthday. I'm 41 now. And and I'm also going to address a question that was actually asked on the podcast in season 1. How did I come up with the name? This podcast is Uncalled For. It's because of this sweatshirt, which was deemed uncalled for by one of my political friends. So I thought, that's when it came time to thinking about doing this podcast. I thought that was pretty funny. So there you go. The podcast itself is now uncalled for. I don't see any more questions or any more feedback. So thank you to everyone who is watching the live stream. And we will get the audio at least edited for season 2 of the podcast, to start the podcast, get that rolling. Please keep supporting the podcast if you aren't already. You can pretty much find us on any podcasting platform, including Apple Podcasts. It's going to take a while for me to get used to that. And if that goes well, I'll try to do another one of these. So you can also check out our blog, which is http all that jazz uncalledfor.home.blog, and we have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/uncalledforpodcast. And the truth of the matter is, I don't make any money from this podcast, so if you are inclined to do so, please support me on Patreon. It's patreon.com/MikeChernivsky, MikeCerniewski. And so, as I mentioned, the Facebook, I'm going to go and close with giving you our download numbers for the end of September, which I traditionally do on the Facebook, but because we're doing the live stream, I'll just go ahead and do it now, right now. We're at 467 unique downloads at the moment. The most downloaded podcast is the first one with Pat Lamb. Number 2 is Adam McKeith at 40. Pat, by the way, is 65 unique downloads. Third is the Thoughts on Being an Ex-Mormon episode with 34. Fourth is Trevor Martin with 30. Matt Sewell would be 5th with 29. The Smash Up Playthrough is at 24. Chris Hertz and Ty Gephardt are both at 21. And then Davon Williams and my thoughts on the NFL treating St. Louis poorly, they're both at 20. So if you've been listening to the podcast, thank you. And keep up the good work. Another programming notes on the podcast is for starting with season 2, we will be doing this bi-weekly, so every 2 weeks instead of every week. That way, it'll give me more time to get interviews scheduled and everything, and not feel as pressured as I have been with season 1 to get interviews going and to get thoughts episodes recorded and still have time to do what I need to do. All right. If we're not going to have any more questions, then I'm going to go and end things now. So thank you all for your continued supports. Let's do another one of these sometime. Hopefully we get more participation. And we look forward to season 2 of the podcast. So thank you and take care. This